Throughout our 120 years, Ford has supported our nation's armed forces and honored their selfless service to our country. The Central Ohio Ford dealers are proud to continue this tradition by investing in the work of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus. Together, we want to share the veterans' heroic stories and introduce a grateful nation to the faces behind our forces. Please join us this year to hear inspiring educational stories from our veterans who have gone above and beyond their call to defend freedom around the world. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum and your Central Ohio Ford dealers. Together, we will never forget.
Hello and welcome to our March Story of Service here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. We're celebrating Women's History Month this month, and we have a U.S. Navy veteran, Beth Ball, joining us today to share her story. Beth served in the Navy from 2001 to 2004. After retiring, she discovered her passion for playing hockey when she attended the Women's Try Hockey for Free event in 2016. Today, Beth is the co-founder of the U.S.A. National Women's Warriors Hockey, a program that is dedicated to offering a safe and therapeutic space for injured and disabled U.S. women veterans to play ice hockey. Beth, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we go into all the U.S.A. National Women's Hockey story, we do want to talk about your service, why you decided to serve and what it meant to serve in the Navy.
Well, my father was retired Navy chief. My brother was also in the Navy. And so a lot of people think that that's actually the origin, or when they find out that I came in 2001 after the 9/11 events. The funny story I like to tell people is I went to talk to the recruiters, and the Air Force was still at lunch, and the Navy came back first, and so they won. Really, it had a lot to do with my dad. I was with him in Palermo, Sicily. I was with him in Texas. We moved a lot, and it was hard as a Navy kid. But, I just remember him talking about his job and just really loving, what he did. And so when I was looking at making that, transition, which was a little bit later in life than most people, I actually joined when I was 29. The Navy was just, the obvious choice.
You left the Navy in 2004, and out of that, you found hockey. So tell us about that transition and what that was like.
Well, the only reason I left is because of an injury. I had not, even though I went in late in life, I had not intended on leaving. I wasn't sure necessarily if I had intended doing, 20 years, but I definitely had not intended, it being a short stint. I loved what I did. Absolutely. I actually still do that type of work today in cybersecurity. And I love the people. Everything about it. But unfortunately, at some point in time, here's this injury. And when I came up for orders, of course, we have to do a sea duty screening, which I failed because I was under doctor's orders at the time. So the transition was very quick for me. And I think sometimes what I found is some of the people that went through kind of like what I did, when we get hurt during service, and there's that uncertainty of, what exactly is going to happen. In my case, it was extremely quick. There weren't the services in place, I think, at that time that there are today for people that are transitioning. And I hadn't been in very long, but again, it was that I had intended to be in. And so there wasn't another career for me, as far as I was concerned. So when it came up, I knew I was going to fail. We figured we would find a way around it. Unfortunately, that just wasn't going to be the case. And so luckily I found a really good job, right out. But unfortunately, for me, there was still that now I don't know what I'm going to do. I had this injury. I have no idea what's going to happen with it. Now I've transitioned from the military doctors. Now I have to find the civilian doctors and kind of go through everything again. So it was really hard. I really wish I had some of the services that are available today back then to kind of help me get through that.
Tell us about that relationship with hockey, and then how you ended up co-founding, this national organization, National Women Warriors Hockey, which we'll get into in a little bit. But what is it with hockey that grabbed you?
Well, not to mention that hockey is, pretty much the best sport that's out there. I'm a goalie. I think goalies are the best position on the ice ever. But no, I watched hockey growing up. I always loved hockey, and I always loved goalies. I thought it was just fascinating that these people got up there and stood in front of these pucks that were being shot at them and didn't flinch. So growing up, I grew up with John Van Beesbrook, the Beezer. He was my absolute favorite. And of course, I was one of the lucky few that got to see Manon Rhéaume when she was playing with Tampa Bay. And that was like, wow, here is a woman doing this. And this was before the Navy. So, fast forward getting out of the Navy. Like I said, I still work in cybersecurity, which is what the Navy put me into. And I ended up getting to go back to Alaska for a job. The first thing my 9-year-old said is, I want to play hockey. So the first thing we did when we got up there is find a rink. And he was at the skating rink every single time it was open. And so, of course, I start seeing people playing hockey. I start seeing adults. They're like, oh, yeah, there's all these leagues. This is going on. This is going on. Well, lo and behold, there is a flyer up for a women's team, the Anchorage Women's Hockey League. And they were doing a try hockey for free. I always tell people it was like a scene in a movie. And I walk in, of course, somebody turns around, hi, are you here for, yes, I'm here. Okay, let's, sit you down and find you some gear. And they start bringing this gear. And I look at it. And the first thing I think is, that's not goalie gear. So I just kind of looked at the lady and I was like, is there any way I can try to be a goalie? And I think when those words came out of my mouth, the entire room just quieted. And everybody looked at me. And they were literally like, you want to be a goalie?
Yeah.
It was then cartoonish, because they start bringing this gear to me. I have no idea what I'm doing. So they're just like, stand up, sit down, lay on your stomach, do this, trying to get all this gear. And I went to take a step and I was like, whoa. And they're all looking at me. I was like, for one, this is a lot heavier than I thought. And I was like, you expect me to skate like this? Got on the ice. It felt a little bit better, when you're moving around. And they put me in net and said, okay, here's how you stand. Here's how you hold the stick. And here's some pucks. And that was the beginning. And so that first year, I was playing with the Women's League. And then probably not even, 6-8 weeks later is when I found the Alaska Warriors team.
Let's talk about the U.S.A. National Women Warriors Hockey, like the program. What's the mission of the organization? And I know the program, is for veteran women with disabilities, but, as it started, how has it grown as you kind of are, a huge part of its growth up to today?
So the U.S.A. Hockey Warrior Program is the program for disabled veterans. And so obviously that's male and female. When I started in 2016 with the Alaska Warriors, I believe we probably had 8-10 teams total in the entire United States. I think now we're over 50 total. Every major city has a warrior team. In 2017, we decided we were going to go to the Disabled Festival, which is the national it's what we call nationals. So the national tournament, and it's where all of the U.S.A. hockey special disciplines come together and compete. And so we decided to go. So I went as the goalie. And then after that, I'd met all these great guys, and I realized I don't think I met one lady, one woman during the entire tournament. So when I went back, I talked with Mike Vaccaro, who is our USA Hockey rep. He's in the Warrior program.
Yep.
And I said, Mike, we need a woman's team. So he's like, okay, go for it. What do you need? I said, put me in touch with all the other leaders from the other Warrior organizations. Like, I was getting some feedback, But it was more like, sure, I've got your information, I'll let you know. And it was very confusing to me because, I was like, I just, put me in touch with these other ladies. Come to find out, there were no other ladies. At the time, I was the only female in the entire warrior organization across the nation, which just blew my mind.
Right.
And I was like, how is this? I know the ladies in Anchorage that play. I know there's got to be other ladies, other places that play. Why wouldn't we have any other females? So fast forward, 2022, I was actually one of about 30 warriors who actually got to go over to Denmark and play against some of the Denmark veteran teams. Again, the only female. At this time, I know there were other females in the program. And I remember the games were over. I was sitting there, kind of just chilling out. I had my flight the next morning. And I get this call from Mike. And he's like, you're going to take a women's team to the Classic. And I said, okay, that's, yeah, let's do it, And he said, okay, how many women do you have? I said, about 4. He said, okay, I'm going to help you. I've talked to Wounded Warrior Project. They are willing to help you guys out. You start calling all those people again. Let's get this happening. I was telling the guys that hadn't left Denmark yet, hey, we're taking a women's team. If you've got any ladies on your Warriors team, they need to contact me. That was really that catapult. I mean, Mike just basically told me, you're doing it. This is what you're doing. What do you need? I've got Wounded Warrior Project. Let's make this happen. And so that's the jersey I have on right now. They sponsored our jerseys and helped us with some of the travel costs and everything to get over to the Classic. It was in Detroit last year. And so I just started contacting people again. And then there was just this point about a month before, sometime in September. And all of a sudden, it was like a flood. It was like the word had finally gotten out. And I was getting messages through Facebook, through Instagram. I was getting emails. Mike was sending me information. And I just kept following up. Where are you from? What position do you play? Do you think you can come? Are you sure? Lo and behold, we all showed up in Detroit. And it was just, I think of any first team getting together, that was probably the best group of ladies that I could have ever asked for from all over the nation. We had them come from California, New Jersey, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Georgia. It was absolutely amazing.
You decided to bring people together during coming out of COVID. And now you guys are traveling, you're in national tournaments. Just for everyone watching, how can people get involved with USA National Women's Warrior Hockey?
Sure. So for the women's team specifically, we have Instagram, USA National Women's Warriors. We have our Facebook group. We also have our website. But the Warrior program is everywhere. So for the women, right now, the ratio is pretty low. So in the entire Warrior organization, there's somewhere around 850 men and about 60 women total. So, but the good news is because the Warrior discipline has grown so big, there is probably a Warrior organization somewhere near where you live. So in the big cities. Minnesota is also working on getting a specific women's program. So that's the reason why we're considered or named, the national team, because we come from everywhere. And the only time we come together to play is at a tournament.
Why do you think wellness and resiliency is important, especially for disabled veterans or the veteran community as a whole?
Well, I can tell you from personal experience, both physically and mentally, it has been huge. Physically, I can tell you that by the time I found the Warrior program in Alaska, I was doing PT 5 days a week. It was cutting into my work schedule, not to mention, the mental part of it, having to go back and forth and keep up with everything. It was really hard. And when I started the Warrior program, one of the things that I realized is that when you're doing something that you love, the pain doesn't seem as bad, if that makes sense. And so for a long time, just being able to get into the equipment was very, very hard. But I needed to do it. I needed to do it for my mental health, not just for the physical part of it. Not to mention having that group of people, being able to have the guys to call. Even if you're just having an issue with the VA and you want to call somebody and ask a question, having that group of people is just, it's more than I can even imagine. The number one feedback that I got after we came back from Detroit was some of those ladies texting me saying, this is exactly what I need. Exactly. And so now we have a group chat. We talk about things that are going on in our lives. We can call each other anytime, day or night. And the fact that we can still come together on and off the ice is the number one reason why we have the team.
Beth, you talk about just making that connection and that, members of your team are like, I needed this. And now it's a part of who you are. From a museum standpoint, we're proud of you. We're going to follow your journey along the way. We're excited and happy for the progress and journey that you guys are on. So with that, Beth, thanks for joining us today for our story of service, for Women's History Month, and for a lot of stories, everyone watching. You can get access to all these stories on our stories page on our website, nationalvmm.org, and just read and listen and hear about more inspiring stories from women this month, but really every day here at the museum. Beth, thanks for being with us. Good luck in the Nationals later this month.
Thank you so much.
Throughout our 120 years, Ford has supported our nation's armed forces and honored their selfless service to our country. The Central Ohio Ford dealers are proud to continue this tradition by investing in the work of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus. Together, we want to share the veterans' heroic stories and introduce a grateful nation to the faces behind our forces. Please join us this year to hear inspiring educational stories from our veterans who have gone above and beyond their call to defend freedom around the world. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum and your Central Ohio Ford dealers. Together, we will never forget.